Welcome, everybody, to episode 3 of Tech Tab. I can't wait to hang out with you today. We've got a packed show full of exciting news, interesting conversation. I have some amazing guests with me here today, which I'm going to announce in just a minute. We've got an amazing co-host, Arun Gupta, who's stepping in for Bob Duffy while he's away. Arun, it's good to have you here. I'm curious, what's an AI tool that you just can't live without right now?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be here. I think there would be 3 tools that I like referring all the time, pretty much. So I guess it would be ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. Those are the 3 tools that I look at, sort of my friends that I can bounce ideas from. And because these models, they hallucinate, and it kind of give me a double check and then kind of hanging out with them. So that's one area. And then the other area that I'm seeing more and more relying upon is Instagram, for example, for my recipes.
Okay. So I did not expect you to say that. So I love having you here. Thanks for spending time with us today. We're joined by 2 fantastic guests. First, Fernando, AI developer and live streamer. You'll notice his mic is very good. He's a former Apple engineer focused on educating users about AI in their daily lives. Ray, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to talk about these AI tools. I've been using them in my daily workflow, and Cursor has been my strongest thing that's been guiding me through a lot of this code and experimentation. So excited to chat some more. Yeah,
it's gonna be fun. So everybody, I am watching all of Ray's live streams and learning a lot from him. And I've noticed that Cursor is a big deal for you right now. So it's gonna be fun to talk about that. We've got another amazing guest, Nathaniel Whittemore, founder and CEO of BeSuper.ai, host of the super popular AI podcast, The Breakdown, and a venture partner at Learn Capital. Nathaniel, we've chatted a couple times. I listened to every episode of your show. It's fun to have you here. So quick question. So from your vantage point, I mean, you study AI every day and talk about it every day. What's one emerging AI trend or development everyone should be paying attention to right now?
The AI is, I think, the tech trend where the obvious hyped things are as relevant as they seem, right? So like, if you're not messing around with vibe coding right now as a non-coder, you're completely missing a beat. If you haven't shifted over to reasoning models, digging back even more months, like you're missing a beat. So, I think if you're not experimenting with agents, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about agents now, you're missing a beat, although I don't think that they're necessarily gonna fit into everyone's kind of day-to-day yet. But look, it's the trends are not complicated. Voice agents are another one. The variety of ways that people are using voice agents are, it's just sort of multiplying and getting more and more ubiquitous for good reason. So this is one area where you kind of don't have to be all that discerning about trends. Just pick any of them that anyone's talking about, and you're probably going to be sort of farther ahead than if you didn't.
Try one, try many, just try. Love it. It's great to have you on the show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We are reading your comments, so pop in the comments. Number 1, tell us where you're calling in from. And number 2, tell us if you have a favorite AI tool that you're using right now. We've already got a couple of good questions that hopefully we'll tackle. Randall was asking about the source material trained that VO3 was trained on. I think I'd like to know a little bit more about that. We've got some friends in the audience. Woody, Mike Bird, good to have you here. Mike says Cursor, Super Whisper, and Obsidian plugin generator are great tools. So fun to see that. So we've got a lot to cover. We're going to cover all the latest news stories and tech buzz. We're going to do a nerd alert. We're going to do a deep dive with some conversation. But let's get right into the show, and we'll head to nerd alert. So let's do it. All right, it's time for Nerd Alert, where we teach you an important technical term from AI. Today, we're going to talk about federated learning. So before I explain it, hop in the comments and tell us if you're already a nerd and you know what federated learning is. And our guests are not allowed to answer. Federated learning is a powerful concept that's becoming really important right now for privacy-focused AI. So federated learning is a machine learning technique that trains an AI model across multiple decentralized edge devices like smartphones, hospital computers or servers holding proprietary data that has local importance without exchanging that local data. So it pools all the data in one place. The model travels to the data, learns locally, and then a central server aggregates those learnings to improve the shared model. Think of it like this. So a group of doctors are trying to build a better diagnostic model. Instead of sending all of their sensitive patient records to a central database, each doctor trains a copy of the model on their own local patient data. Then they only share the insights or improvements, the model updates, with a central coordinator who combines them all to make the shared model smarter for everybody without the individual patient data that is private. Obviously, this has big implications, right? So this is huge for privacy and data security. It allows AI models to learn from vast amounts of real-world data, like your typing patterns to improve your phone's keyboard, medical data for advanced research, without compromising individual user privacy. It also reduces data transmission costs and latency because it's happening on device. You're seeing things like improved predictive text on your phone, personalized recommendations, and even drug discovery where data is highly sensitive. So there's a lot of companies getting involved in this. Google uses it for Gboard, which is their keyboard app. Android's Now Playing Song uses it for the recognition. Apple also uses similar privacy preserving techniques. It's really key in this new privacy-focused AI world that we're in. So if you're in the audience, would love to hear from you. What's an example where you think federated learning would be really helpful or useful in your life that you would like you potentially use it or would like it to be used? And then I'm going to go to my guests and ask you all a couple questions about federated learning. So Ray, given your focus on AI and development, how significant do you think federated learning is actually? How important is it really? Are we going to see a lot of companies, a lot of users using it, or is it a hyper specialized use case? What are your thoughts?
I think I always think about these AI things as just explorations because we're still so early in this whole landscape. And I love that people are looking at this because this is my first concern, having worked at Apple previously. This has been something that's been going on for decades, and it's something that they've always talked about since the inception of the iPhone. I do remember Steve Jobs talking about the concern for that. So
I remember the Apple logo being the lock and how important that was to the brand, right?
Yeah, it's like it's like never not been. It's kind of started from there. So it's like from and like everything from the entire stack all the way up. From it's very well thought out and really really cool. But on where this is going with AI is really interesting because differential privacy was an interesting thing with keyboards, right? You don't want to collect all this data and then send this back. And so there's a lot of immediate explorations that you're seeing done currently, like in this space, like with Google and so forth. But I have two different things. I have one like a really microscopic view, which is biology, because my goal is to, these biological systems do similar things, right? They only have instruction sets and they're very, very small and parameterized. And then the little systems kind of work upon themselves, and then a larger system will kind of come in and take that information and kind of tie it together, right? That's how you know your right hand's doing something different from your left hand. And so I want biologists to take this type of learning to apply it, and not specifically for language models, but for modeling proteins and other types of diseases and things like that. Because maybe there could be new ways of discovery with cancer that can involve like sound, right? And energy types of frequencies that things are emitted that we've just never kept track of. So that's like a very like technical mathematical level that can be dreamed of, but also at a higher level, like within your own home, for senior care, it could be extremely important because these models aren't necessarily trained for specific languages or watching people's faces and things. So there's a lot of data you can collect in the house, like a HomePod, just listening can hear thuds and different sounds and things and interactions and start to build this data about your own home that you don't necessarily want stored in the server, to be trained on for other types of things, but it could be extremely useful at the house. Absolutely. But there are characteristics that can be defined for specific home environments that are almost like specific tunables. Wow. That can be left there. And so, yeah, I'm thinking about a lot of different use cases, and I want people to not be so scared because I think Federated has a very specific mathematical technique, but to dream a little bit bigger in terms of like architecture, saying like, okay, how small can we make this? What are the techniques you can apply? Right. But then what are some other dreamy things that we should all start thinking of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We got a comment coming in from Randall. He says he's interested in using federated learning in K-12 education and keeping student data, performance, attendance, health, et cetera, in-house. I know, Arun, we think a lot about, edge compute at Intel. Do you think that we're going to start to see a lot of federated learning, kind of back to the SETI days where it's like everybody who wants to train some data might be able to do that kind of thing? How do you envision federated learning kind of playing out?
I think it's given. I think it's eventual because up until now, I mean, as Ray was talking about, there are genuine concerns like HIPAA, data privacy, differential privacy, where the data can't be sent, and yet you want the model to be more effective. And if you think about it, the source of data is generally at the edge, right?
Yeah.
And one of the projects that I would like to highlight that Intel created was about OpenFL. And we gave that project to Linux Foundation. And as a matter of fact, Ray, you talked about this use case of detecting cancer. There is this effort that we ran with University of Pennsylvania, Penn Medicine specifically, called as FETS. And as part of that, we were able to do the diagnosis of femur tumor
Wow.
a lot earlier. And this study was happening all around the world. And they were like, we were sending the model to them. Then they would train it locally in their geography. Then the model comes back and the accuracy improves. Then you send that updated model. So there's a bit of a back and forth between the model, but the data is staying in their jurisdiction.
So cool.
And what you have done is, as you talked about those dreamy things, I only see this growing bigger.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to get better, right? So, very, very exciting. So folks, that is our nerd alert for the day, federated learning. Dig in, you can probably talk to ChatGPT about that if you want to learn more. But I think it's a big, important topic. So let's go next to our next big section, which is Tech Buzz. We're going to cover all the news. So let's hit it. Oh boy, y'all, there is so much going on. There's so much going on that Nathaniel has a show every day to talk about it. So we've got a lot to cover over the last 2 weeks. So the first story is all about Anthropic. So Claude 4 launched their most powerful models yet. They released Claude Opus 4 and Sonnet 4, which set records on SWE Bench, which is the software engineering bench, solving more than 70% of coding bugs straight out of the box. Both models can enter a, quote, extended thinking mode, where they browse the web, execute code, and work for hours on a single task without losing thread. Everybody is talking about this. I'm using Sonnet 4, all the time now, dipping into Opus occasionally when I can afford it. So, Ray, I know you're deep into this right now. I'm curious, does Claude 4 beat other models in your real life dev experience? Talk to us a little bit about it and tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, Claude 4 seems like it just got a can of spinach, and Popeye's got like the big arms, and it's just powering through things that would normally just kind of stop really early. And what I actually found to be extremely effective was to actually have the Opus model generate some plans, and I've started experimenting with this thing called repo prompt. So it allows me to select more files and get those things in context, because I do want the actual language model to kind of light up its different, latent space type of things, and have more familiarity. A little bit different from using an editor like Cursor or Windsurf, because they will only take snippets of code. And because the context level is actually high enough, I've been using Opus to say, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. I want to refactor my code. Can you help me clean up my AI slop? Want to kind of,
AI slop. Pretty great.
Yeah. Or AI, generations where you kind of generate stuff and it goes into these different directions. And you kind of want to, as an engineer, you're like, this is now getting out of hand. Let's just kind of rein it back again. Yeah. I want to have my data system together, and I want to have these different entity diagrams so I know what my front end and back end is doing. And so as an Opus model, it's been incredibly helpful and super thorough and digs through the details. This is what I was doing previously with O1 Pro, but now I just do with Opus. Not only is it really fast, but the accuracy is incredible. And then from there, handing it off to any agent, and so Claude Sonnet 4 has been now my like new workhorse to take these plans. And the cheat code here is really that extended thinking. So at each step, it seems to do like another tool call and kind of check back on its plan, do some thinking, understand its context, keep that context, and keep rolling. And this actually has a compounding effect that I have not seen in a model for a very long time. And, I think we were getting snippets of that with these reasoning models with O1 and then O3.
Yep.
But this is kind of taking it to that next level, specifically for coding, which Absolutely. I've been blown away by. Yeah.
It's so exciting. So Nathaniel, I listened to your show where you walked people through the models in ChatGPT in particular. It was really helpful. Here's what O3 is for, here's 4.5. That was before, I think, Sonnet 4 and Claude and Opus 4 dropped. So I'm curious now that you've, had a week or and a half with these new models, how is it changing your workflow now?
It's not yet for me is the short answer.
Love it.
But that's because, so a couple things. One, Anthropic is unique among the big labs in that they're the only one that has a single specific use case that sort of the industry has definitively agreed their models are best at, right? Which is coding. And it, it doesn't matter about benchmarks. It's vibes as much as anything, right? So there's clearly a huge emphasis on that use case with this. And I think a ton of people have switched over right away. I think, 3.7 there were a lot of people who were using 3.5 still over 3.7 for a variety of reasons. And this seems to have solved some of the sort of, loquacious problems that people were experiencing with that. So, a lot of positive reports around that. I think that for me, 4 Opus represents kind of what it seems like OpenAI wants to head towards of these models that can kind of effortlessly switch between their thinking kind of reasoning mode and their generic mode. And so far, I'm still pretty much in the I like, my use cases that I have with one, and I, sort of toggle for that. I don't think that's the pattern that we're going to see for most people. But me, I'm still locked in, and I am still very O3 is my favorite model that's ever been built for the types of things that I do, for the sort of business strategizing, thinking through problems. I think that it still is sort of just tops of the tops for me. So that's why it's very, very specific to my use case. It's not a knock on Anthropic that it hasn't actually kind of changed my workflows yet.
No, that makes sense. And I think we're kind of getting used to all these models and putting our reps in and seeing, what feels the best and works. So quick question for the audience. So give me a thumbs up if you are trying Claude 4 right now, or thumbs down if you're just sticking with your current models. Nathaniel's a thumbs down at the moment. So Ray and I are thumbs up. So Arun, where are you at with, Claude 4, Opus 4 compared to other models? What are you using a lot right now and why?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I had to put my head around, is it Claude 4 Opus 4 or is it Claude Opus 4? The naming I had to kind of figure out in my head. Oh, it's actually Claude Opus 4, as opposed to, because, and I listened to Mike Krieger, who's a CPO at Anthropic. He talked about sort of the rationale behind that naming, and I get it now. So I think, I would concur with what Josh was saying. Literally over the weekend, I was playing on Cursor. I wanted to just kind of get that. And I think, Nathaniel, you were talking about vibe coding. So I was just trying, hey, let me take a look at my Strava profile and see if I can build a custom app that can craft my running summary from a certain day to certain day. That feature is missing in Strava today. So I did some vibe coding using Cursor with Claude 4 backend. And in 45 minutes, it is pretty impactful. It gave me a full app running. And the point, I think, Ray, you were talking about it, is doing thinking, is saying that, for example, I give it an error that, hey, you know what? Your results are off by a day. And it says, let me think about it. And then it can explain the reasoning to me. Then it says, aha, it is indeed off by a day. So it ran the test, and it ran the test again to make sure this is working correctly and explain the rationale to me. So that over a period of time kind of builds confidence. So I think in that sense, the Claude 4 combination with a Cursor, I think is pretty compelling. one of the things that I'm planning to try is try it with Codium as well. I guess as long as you're using Cloud 4 as a backend, it doesn't matter what the front end tool is. End of the day is going to come from that side. So I think that's how I see it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I find that I'm using OpenAI's whole garden for my personal life, right? So ChatGPT knows a lot about me, right? And O3, Nathaniel, I agree, is just, it's like talking to the most intelligent, kind of kind, patient person you've ever known, and they know almost everything about you. And I find that's very helpful. But for just hardcore productivity building, like I'm all in Cursor, primarily using Opus for planning, and then Sonnet for execution. But it's interesting, like how that plays out, and I wonder how these worlds will cross. The other day I had Opus. I asked a question when I was thinking about building a big feature, and it created a mermaid flowchart, of the user experience, and I was like, whoa. I didn't ask it to do that. So I'm getting more and more of these delightful moments. But it was like, I think that call cost $1 or something for that Opus call. So I was like, ooh, like how much so we're gonna have to figure all that out. So it's exciting that these models are coming out. The last sort of question I have for the group is, when are we going to see a 1 million token context window with, Anthropic's models? Like, is that happening? Where are we at? Because I tend to use, Gemini 2.5 Pro a lot just because of the big context. Ray, what do you think?
I'd like to see more features similar to what maybe OpenAI is doing, to be honest, first versus the long context window, because a lot of what I'm doing is these tasks that are gathering context for my code base and like also doing research. So I'm pulling in bits and pieces of documentation. And what O3 does that is amazing as far as like ChatGPT interface is doing the web search. If you ever see it do web search, do like 10 different ones like in parallel, and then have this additional bit of reasoning that they're doing in the back end to kind of put it together. And it's like, it sort of is now trying to really understand me. And I feel like if they can get that experience in, I'm still happy with 200K effective, context window of some sort. Right. That I know that it's going to be focusing and kind of putting at the output. And, if you add some extended thinking between those traces of logic, like it does with the planning, a little bit of what Claude Code does, I think I would take that first before the 1 million context window.
Right. Fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. So Josh in the audience says OpenAI voice assistant has saved his relationship. Free therapy sessions and brainstorming. I find that a lot. I find it interesting how I did a call with one of my sister's friends about how to do AI, like how to use AI, and she was using ChatGPT, but she was just using 4.0, and she never explored the other models. And I think, Nathaniel, your show is perfect for folks like that. Like, oh, yeah, there is a 4.1 or 4.5, or how these things work. And, the difference in quality output between the models is still shocking. So I'm kind of curious, like the golden moment for me is when we just have this kind of dynamic model routing, that just intelligently picks the right model for whatever is happening, as we go. So okay, we could talk about this for the whole show, but we got to keep moving on to the next news story. So let's keep going. We had the very exciting Google I/O happen. So Google I/O 2025 unveiled a $249 AI Ultra plan and smart AR glasses. They're, Google's really going deep on AR. Excited to see what happens. So their Ultra AI subscription gives power users the highest tier Gemini access. They get first dibs on experimental agent tools, but it does cost $249 a month. The company also showed their new Android XR smart glasses. They translated 2 spoken languages on the fly, answered questions. They talked about whatever the wearer was looking at. There's a lot of cool things that came out of I/O. One thing as well was Stitch, which is their new tool that creates UI. And there's just so many amazing things that came out of this. So before I go to guess, curious in the audience, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're going to try this Ultra plan from Google. Tell us where you're spending your AI money. There's a lot of choice here. Nathaniel, do you think, are you going to pay this $250 a month for the Ultra plan? Where are you at?
I would if it started to, beat out ChatGPT or Claude for specific use cases. I mean, I think that the market has demonstrated at this point that a $200-ish price point for a power user is fine, right? I mean, all of this price discovery has been just completely, speaking of vibes, based on vibes. It was the $20 a month that ChatGPT chose was, literally them saying what seems right and picking a number, and then everyone anchoring to that. You saw it with the enterprise subscriptions being $30. It's the same exact thing. It's just like, maybe it should be a little bit more than the regular thing, so it'll be 30, and then every enterprise AI service anchored around 30, right? 200 was another experiment. I think one of the things that was funny is that, within a couple days of that, Sam Altman said that they were actually losing money on the $200 subscriptions because the people who were using it so much. I think it's pretty binary. The people who are using and getting value out of that $200 subscription, it's like, it's a drop in the bucket of what it's not even a consideration. It's just, right. It's worth so much more than that. So I think that it makes sense. It's not surprising to me that you're seeing parity. One of the things that I do think is interesting from a competitive dynamic standpoint is how much sort of like accepted, it's not coordination and it's not collusion, but just, it's very clear that the companies, all of the big tech labs, all of the frontier labs are comfortable just going with what the standard seems to be as it adapts, rather than trying to kind of like rip everyone back to them instead of sort of focus on the other guys. So I think you see this in naming conventions. The fact that like all of the deep research products are named some version of deep research. This is actually extremely pro-consumer. It doesn't force people to like have to relearn 100 different versions of the same thing. It allows everyone to be like, okay, that is a type of use. That is sort of like a pattern of use now. And you're seeing that like the other one that I think is obviously more dramatic is alignment around standards like MCP. I think the how fast people got on that train, I think, is extremely notable, especially if you kind of look at the protocol wars from the past. And so I think that you're seeing some of that with pricing too. It's like, screw it, if $200 is, $200 to $250 is the right price, like we'll do it, and like I said, I actually think it's fairly pro-consumer for these sort of patterns to just be locked in.
Yep, absolutely. It's interesting. I'm finding the real decision point is, if I would have been hiring people to do some of these things, then it's just a no-brainer. Of course, I'll pay, $250 for Gemini, $200 for OpenAI, $200 for Claude Max. Like, but as soon as it's like, well, this is probably a personal use thing, I'm probably going to pick my AI, and go all in. So most of my use is professional, so I'm just like happy to pay all of it. But I'm not sure where that shakes out. Arun, how many of these apps are you currently paying for, and what do you think is kind of your max?
Yeah, no, I was actually about exactly thinking the way you were explaining it as well. I was, again, go back to Mike Krieger for a second. Mike Krieger was saying that when they're hiring software engineers, they are not looking at just pure software engineers. They're looking at people who can be orchestrators of Claude, who can use it more effectively and then be quick to turn out work. And so I think that's where it comes down to. So if this is part of their core job, if you are educator, if you are a learner, if you are constantly want to be on the edge, you want to try out the latest bleeding edge product, then $200, $250 is not a big price. I mean, if you think about it, it's $2,500 a year, but with AI changing pace every month, you want to be on that edge. But for somebody like me, where I'm just using it for like, okay, instead of starting from a blank sheet, I want to leverage it for, make sure I am updated. I think, that $20, plus plan or a pro plan is good enough. And like I talked to my son, he's a Gen Z. So he's very happy with his $20 pro plan. He doesn't do Google search anymore. All his searches have moved over to ChatGPT.
Yes.
And whenever we are on a family trip, as a matter of fact, I've seen him using multiple times a day. So in that sense, that's the market, that's the audience that they're reaching out to. So I think there's definitely a market for $200 to $250 plan. If you're using it for professional use, absolutely no question. Like, I don't think if I need it for my work, I would even question it even 1 second.
Yeah, because the value is just 100x that. So the other day, so we share a ChatGPT account as a family, because it's sort of like, well, I've got the $200 plan. I can't really justify buying more plans for my kids. And so, so I was talking, I think I was talking to O3 just on voice, like about project management or something that I was struggling with. And it was chatting back, and then it stopped talking. And I said, please continue. And my son was obviously talking to at the same moment about F-16s and the right Sidewinder missile that he was supposed to put on his plane that he was modeling. And so then he started talking about the right ratio for Sidewinder missiles on the F-16. And I was like, whoa, okay. You're talking to two people at once. So thought that was kind of funny to see how this shakes out. Well, it's exciting to see what's happening. We'll go to our next story in a second, but I think we're in an interesting moment where I feel very unloyal, to any of these labs right now. I will switch in an instant from Gemini 2.5 Pro to, Claude 4, Sonnet instantly, because I get better results. So it'll be fascinating to see kind of, how that shakes out. So let's keep rolling. We've got a couple more stories to get through. Next one is about Apple. They will apparently open its on-device AI models to developers at WWDC 2025. So for the first time, third-party apps will be able to tap Apple's privacy-focused local language models, potentially bringing much smarter features to iOS and macOS without cloud latency. Apple hopes that this, quote, Apple intelligence, which we all know is not very intelligent at the moment, push the spark for a new wave of AI-powered apps, maybe catching them back up to Google. We'll see. I'm sure we're all very disappointed with Siri and Apple Intelligence right now. I guess, Ray, I'll probably go to you next as someone who spent a lot of time at Apple. What are your comments on this? Tell us more.
Well, obviously, I can't speak for them, but I could definitely speak for myself, because I'm an individual who doesn't work there anymore. And so I think I use the iPhone and have been since the very beginning, and I'm like extremely frustrated and disappointed, just like everyone else, like you say. I think there's a lot of opportunity here to play around with these models. I've been playing around a lot with this MLX framework, which basically allows you to, utilize all the capabilities and the hardware of the device to run these models locally. So whatever, even if they give a model and it's not that good, what I want Apple, like if I were to tell Apple and speak to the CEO right now and say, Tim, please give us the frameworks and everything we need in Xcode to make it as good as it is to deploy AI apps like I do on Vercel right now. On Vercel, they have an AI SDK. It's phenomenal. I can go on V0. I can dream up an app by speaking to it, hooks into all of their UI frameworks, builds it all in the fly. In like 15 minutes, I can have an app deployed, running on their platform, easy, and I can start collecting money from Stripe immediately.
Yep.
I want that for the App Store. That's all I want, and AI should be at the heart of that. And just even running AI models that can do voice locally without a server uncomplicates a lot of these problems that people are currently running into with vibe coding. Yeah. So if it just runs only on device and you have those intelligent capabilities, now you eliminate that much more complexity in your code. And so that's where actually Apple has a huge runway to go here. And I'm seeing kind of Google stepping into this mix. But the biggest downfall right now is like, how do you get the code onto the device and actually do really cool stuff? So that's kind of.
I know it's I've heard talks that maybe we're going to open up. In fact, Gary Tan went to Washington D.C. and said, hey, Apple should open up the Siri interface so that we can choose our AI. And I would use my iPhone way more if I could actually use, Perplexity or a ChatGPT for real as the actual engine. So it's actually made me think about switching to Android, which I never.
Same.
Let me give some context here. I worked at Apple for 2 years, and I started their first open source program office, and to simplify the open source practice at Apple. And within 2 years, and this was, OSPO. So this was 2020 to 2022. And very quickly, I realized the desire was not there. And I think that needs to change. That is the fundamental element that we are talking about that needs to change. And while Xcode is great, but then you are only targeting Apple audience. I think there is a huge opportunity. A lot of the innovation in AI is happening outside Apple, not
Yeah.
inside Apple at this moment.
Yeah.
They have definitely missed the initial boat. So I think, how do you tap into all the innovation that is happening in the PyTorch community? Can you bring them over to Apple? Can you do some on-device? Let these millions of developers. We talked about 750 million downloads of PyTorch. Can you tap into that download community, bring them over to Apple, and
Wow.
show some creativity on how they can? I think that's the missing piece, in my opinion. It's a excellent company at design, user experience, and but they are lacking that engineering, that skill right now. The back end functionality is missing, in my opinion, today.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, I wonder if this is similar to what we saw happen in Google. Everybody thought Google may lose, and they weren't going to show up. And obviously, internally, they fixed that. And I think we're all hoping Apple steps up. We need another competitor here. But I don't know if culturally, inside the company, like you said, if they're designed for that. Nathaniel, do you think, like, if this is real, that this is the moment that Apple actually enters back in the conversation, or are they a lost cause?
Lost cause. 100%. No, it is. They are. The problem is not that Apple is not just that they're failing. It's that they have literally zero, absolutely no vision for what they think this future looks like. It would be a reasonable take for Apple to say, we are actually going to sit out for 3 years until there are essential consumer applications that everyone has to use, and just use our giant cash pile to like buy into whatever. Like that would, I don't think that would be right, but it would be coherent at least. There's nothing. They are just they're awash in ineptitude, like no vision for what the future is, leadership that is sort of embattled. They're moving the leadership of an unsuccessful product in Vision Pro over into this, hoping that it saves it. The most obvious thing that's sitting there in front of them, Siri, they couldn't get it together. I think it's a one of the most spectacular failures watching that we're watching in real time. Now, people are so devoted to these devices that even that doesn't mean that they're out, right? Like I am not at a point where I'm gonna switch devices, right? It's all Apple. I'm on a Mac. I'm gonna be using a Mac. Like I just like the sort of the hardware, the ecosystem enough, and so that buys them a lot of ability to screw it up. But they are screwing it up. Like if you look at Google. As a comparison, because I do think it's a reasonable comparison, because 2023 and beginning of 2024, it's catastrophic, right? They've completely surrendered all of the lead. They're talking, by the time they even start pushing things out, it's clear that they're rushed and feeling pressure. They're having the hallucinations with glue on pizza and stuff. Like it's really bad. Like the turnaround in a year has been spectacular. However, even when it was going bad, it wasn't for lack of vision. It was managerial challenges, cultural challenges. Like there's all sorts of like real big company stuff, but it wasn't because at any point they didn't think that this was important. In fact, that they kind of had like under-designed but oversupplied their teams doing AI, right? They didn't have too many different strategies going on in too many different places rather than sort of like one coherent focus. Apple is like the opposite. They just have nothing, they picked a guy who's sort of like relatively hostile to it seems, to lead these efforts. Like, I think it's been spectacular and sad to watch. But again, it's, they still, it might not matter when all, when all is said and done, in terms of like, it may not cost them all that much ultimately, except in sort of like the interim short term.
Yeah. So in a second, I'm going to ask you how you really feel, because
it's hard to get a straight answer from me. I know.
I just wanted Siri to be good so bad, and it's just so bad. So come on, Apple, please, we want you to win. Let's see what happens. Or we want you to compete. So how about that? All right, let's keep going. Let's talk quickly about our last news story, and then we're gonna move on to deep dive. It's about Operator. So I'm curious where my guests are with Operator and various sort of agentic web tools. So OpenAI upgraded their autonomous operator agent to use O3 as the underlying model. So Operator now runs by default with O3 out of the box. It brings sharper reasoning and stronger math skills while adding extra guardrails so the agent can ask before it does anything risky. updates show OpenAI doubling down really on their race to build trustworthy agents that take real action out there in the real world. So if you're in the audience, pop in the comments, tell us if you trust it or not. Kind of curious if you all are trying out Operator. Let's just do a quick round the horn. Do you use Operator or a tool like that? What do you think? I'll go first. I tried Operator when it first came out, was underwhelmed, kind of impressed, like, wow, this is an AI clicking around the web, but wasn't able to do what I wanted. And I haven't since gone back. So let's go around the horn. Let's start with Ray. Are you using Operator or a web agent like that? What do you think?
I use Operator just like you, went back to it again, still wasn't as impressed, but I've been using something called scout.new. And so it's from two guys who actually formed a paradigm called computer.new. I know computer.new, all these .new things, but they are working very closely with computer use agents, and they were featured in the OpenAI keynote, actually. And so these guys are from backed by Y Combinator, and they, Manus is, from China. So like, if people are concerned about having data over there, these guys are US based. And so their computer agents, well, you can't really see it clicking on screen, is incredibly good at gathering information and doing those types of tasks that are agentic. And this is kind of where I feel like we're getting really close to really autonomous use, because it can run for, 30 minutes to an hour or so to do these types of research tasks. Wow. So everything that I used to give Manus, I just give it to scout.new, and it is really, really good. And they use different models underneath the hood, but
I'll have to try it.
Yeah.
And Ray's not being paid to say that even. So
no.
Scout.new, I love it. All right, Nathaniel, how about you? Using any web use agents yet?
I'm not. I'm fairly bearish on them in the short term. They're going through a phase that they have to go through of they need to be tested. We need to learn with them in practice. It's not something you can cook up in a lab, but the use cases are underwhelming. I think, a lot of the things that they have to sort of like the phases that they have to proceed through are things that they don't do all that well, that aren't all that painful in our normal lives, right? Like ordering food, all the sort of normal things that you see, presented in ads. But again, that's very short-term bearish. Like it's just, you're never going to get to the other side of them actually being useful until you go through that. So completely supportive of these companies trying things out. I think that you're starting to see more specification of use cases, even with Manus. If you've noticed Manus over the last couple of weeks, it's like Manus Slides is announced, and then Manus Video is right. Like they are kind of starting to hone in on specific functions, right? And so that makes sense to me as sort of a pattern. I think. So I don't think that, although Operator, I don't think is sort of a daily use type of a thing. I think it was probably the right call to get it out there, to start, observing behavior, to start testing it, learning in real practice. And I think that it's, in terms of its relevance and value, judge it on sort of 4 iterations from now, not this one is my general feeling.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So Team Red Studio is saying in the comments, yes, AI can do the boring tasks. If I already know what I'm going to write, it's easy. And let it be generated and check what I want. I agree. If the guardrails are tight, yeah, it's pretty great. Arun, using any web agent tools yet?
Not yet. I tried them, Ryan, very much like you when it came out, just for the fun. Like, let me get the experience right. I think the question really is, we mentioned that about trust. That, even if I get the information, how much validation I need to do that, give me your reasoning. Like, you missed out on the second step itself. So then 3, 4, 5, 6 is all irrelevant to me. So are you able to understand, or am I giving you the proper prompt? Maybe my prompt was not right. So then that half an hour that the agent spent on it was useless, actually. So I think, agree, actually, that I think it's a matter of time.
Yep.
I think of it in terms of forming, storming, norming.
Yeah.
And I think by the time it gets to norming, performing level is when people will start getting more traction. They'll say, aha, this is actually serving my pain point, and I'm going to start leveraging it more.
Yep.
Agree with Nathaniel as well that I don't think it's too far out. I'm hoping 2026 early time frame is when we're going to start seeing, hopefully, more such agents be relevant.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually curious. I want to go into Cursor and use the Firecrawl MCP and then the Playwright MCP and basically say, I want you to do all this stuff on the web and then orchestrate it. Because I just feel like we're still very far from just releasing the agent and saying, I expect you to figure all this out. Give me the data in the format I want. Whereas inside of Cursor, I can orchestrate this closed loop, or inside of Windsurf or whatever your AI idea of choice is. So I think that's the next step, is we'll see kind of power users using MCP to orchestrate, agents that can go out and do things in the web. But it's very much human in the loop at the moment. So Kelsey Hawkins in the audience is saying, agree, trust it, but verify. Absolutely. That's kind of where we're at. So next up, we have a deep dive discussion actually close to this topic. So we're going to dive in to the deep dive. Let's hit it. All right. So the topic today is the next frontier of AI agents, utility versus trust. So very connected into the conversation we just had. So we're zooming out to discuss autonomous AI agents that we mentioned at the big dilemma around them, which is how useful can we make them and how much can we trust them? We've seen a wave of these AI agents. We just talked about Manus and various other ones like Operator that promise to handle tasks for us without constant supervision. Things like scheduling meetings, shopping online, writing code, maybe even controlling smart devices. It's an exciting idea. Obviously, we all want kind of a tireless digital helper, but it also raises some eyebrows. So if the AI agent is making decisions for us and on our behalf, how are we giving it the right permissions and the right oversight? Where are we going with all this? Audience, I'd love to hear from you. Imagine you had an AI agent that could do almost anything for you. What would be the first thing you would have it do? I would have it check my kids' homework. So I want to ask our guests about this because, where are we going with setting up trust frameworks with AI agents? How are humans in the loop with these things? And I want to imagine where we'll be 6 months out from now. Because like Nathaniel said, expect it to be not great for a little while, but it's going to be great, soon. So let's talk about 6 months out when some of these kinks have been worked out. What do we imagine we'll be doing? And what do people need to be thinking about as they deploy those agents? Ray, I'm going to go to you first. I know that you've thought a lot about background agents more on the coding side of things. So why don't you tell me where you think we'll be 6 months from now with, agentic coding agents, and what do we need to think about?
Yeah, I think less of my agents as butlers, but more as the people to kind of guide me through a learning experience. Because to me, a lot of people getting started are going to be learning and upskilling. So my focus right now is just literally upskilling myself to be an entrepreneur. And I've never been an entrepreneur. I worked as a researcher. I worked as an engineer inside of a corporate company all my life. So now I'm having to relearn all my tool sets and then use these like AI agents as sort of an operating system. And I've been kind of doing that through live streaming and stuff. And so what I'm basically doing is like, hey, just send me in this direction, because previously having like dyslexia is the worst thing ever because it takes so much energy to read. I can get down these rabbit holes that then I have to get myself back out of. And so with AI and especially the agents, they at least point me and it's like, point the boat in this direction, just keep going. And so as you come up to different waves of things, then you'll kind of fight them as you go. And that's kind of the way I'm seeing. It's like, okay, I'm only seeing 200 feet in front of me right now. And this guy is kind of my compass to kind of get me there. And so that's kind of the paradigm that I'm using. And then I'm verifying as I go and I'm learning as I go too. So as I learn more things, then I'm kind of trying to do that feedback loop. And that's kind of my current framework of doing this. It's like being very curious, using it sort of as a compass to direct my education, and then pulling in the different things that are happening. And because things are happening in real time, I think the more essential thing is going to be, how can I connect with people in that industry? Where are they at and where can I meet them? And just from today's like live stream, I'm going to meet up, Arun afterwards. It's like, hey, cool. Like I never would have met you had I not been participating. So I think that's going to be the framework that I use to kind of move this thing forward for me.
I love it. So Nathaniel, how about you? How do you think you'll be using agents 6 months from now? And how do you need to think about the permissions or the you being in the loop to really make it effective?
I'm going to answer this in a different way. I think it's more interesting to share what we're seeing with companies. So at Super, we probably talk to on average 50 to 100 enterprises a week about their agent strategy. The core product that we have is this agent readiness audit that goes in, uses a voice agent to interview people, and then maps their opportunities back against what's available. And so we have a pretty close field of vision to trends. And there's a couple things that I think are notable. The first is that companies, while they are in an experimental phase, they are not experimenting in the way that even they were like with co-pilots. It's a totally different type of intention. This is not a, hey, let's try a pilot and see how it goes. It's, we're going to be agentified over the course of the next coming years. What's the first thing that we have to do? And then from there, what's the infrastructure that we learn we need to put together? And then how do we put that infrastructure into place? And then how do we expand? It's just a very, very different mindset.
So they're saying we are going to be agentified. So
100%. Absolutely. It's not a question. Yes. Wow. This is not an if, this is a when, it's a how, and how we get there. And so these questions of, it's a pretty natural pattern to sort of like find kind of a low hanging fruit type of agentic experience to test, right? You still see people doing pilots, and that can be, customer service is obviously an example. Sales is obviously an example. Kind of, sales is one of the least threatening areas to try agents, even from an employee base, because you just always want more leads. Yeah. And in general, I think that what people kind of recognize is that the things that they're kind of most excited about to see with agents are the things that will be at the very core of their business, that actually kind of change how they operate in a fundamental way or open up and unlock new opportunities. But in general, agents are not yet at a place where those sort of functions and use cases are really ready for prime time, right? It's like there's a basically a zero tolerance or threshold for hallucinations and errors and mistakes, whereas internal facing communications, like if there's errors, that's fine, you can handle that. Yeah. And so there's a ton of experimentation on sort of the margins, and then a lot of infrastructure being built out, and that infrastructure takes the form of both sort of actual technical infrastructure, data architecture, and sort of data readiness, but it's also policy stuff, right? And I think that a lot of the conversations right now are around these questions, right? Privacy issues, guardrails, permission systems, all that sort of stuff. It's a huge opportunity for startups because it's sort of very, very messy legacy systems that people have, incredible data fragmentation. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. But I think that people are, they're parallel processing this, right? They're trying things out where they can while also building infrastructure at the same time.
Yeah, boy. I mean, I'm sure this is happening to you all and many of our listeners. You're starting to see a lot of the processes in your work and in your life that you could turn into an agent workflow. And it's like, whoa, and then you start to realize, gosh, I'm going to be an orchestrator of many, many agents. And that is absolutely where we're going. And I'm going to be hiring people that are, orchestrators of agents. And it just changes. It all makes everything we do right now seem so slow. It's like, wow. But where does that lead, and how fast do we get there? Arun?
Yeah, I mean, if I think about it, it reminds me when we originally were sending email from iPhone, the email would say sent from my phone, right? Yeah. So I can imagine that for the next few months, that's the phase we're going to be in. That, this email was generated by an agent, so don't blame a human for this kind of a thing. Until we get that trust, that hallucination kind of part figured out, and then we are on the path. Eventually, what I would like to see is, today, if I have to use agents, I have to go to a specific tool. I have to disrupt my existing workflow and then go there and then say, okay, delegate the task and then gather the result back. What I would like to see, next year, early next year, is agents to be integrated into my existing tool set. So if I'm using Slack, if I'm using Teams, if I'm using Visual Studio Code, I want that agentic workflow to be Slack integrated right in there. Yep. So that in a meeting, I should be able to use a code word or use some sort of a tag word by which I can just delegate an agent that, hey, while we are discussing this, agent, go figure this out for me. And 30 minutes later in the meeting, it comes back. Here's what I found. Boom, boom, boom. So I think that integration with your existing workflow is going to be a really key, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you're sort of parallel processing yourself, right? I want these things to be done and figured out while I'm in this meeting and come back to me. That will be fascinating to see how it plays out. The main way I'm using agents right now is background coding agents. So I've paid for Codex at OpenAI, and I basically, deploy, probably 10 quick bug fixes a day, where I just say, I know this is an easy, primarily backend fix. Go sort it out, create the pull request, review it real quick, merge it. You can now tag in a bug bot, right, to look at it real quick to help you on the PR. So that seems pretty straightforward. And then in Cursor, right, you have background agents. I can see deploying, hundreds, if not thousands of developers, right? So it's so interesting to see where we're going. Get Max is saying we are already living in agent land today. We just don't all know it yet. So that is our deep dive today. Just kind of a dive into agents, permissions, privacy. Arun, I really love your idea around, we'll probably see this, made by an agent, for X amount of months, and then it just goes away. So excited to see where this goes. So next up, we have a quick little game, fact or fiction. We're going to dive in on that, and then we're going to wrap the show. So let's head to the... All right, everybody. Now is the time to put on your little brain hat and type fact or fiction. I'm going to read out a statement, and all you have to do is write fact or fiction in the comments. And I would love our guests to join in the fun. Let's see who's the smartest. All right. So the first question is, or statement, should I say, AI models like GPT-4 can pass the bar exam. Fact or fiction? So one more time, AI models like GPT-4 can pass the bar exam. Fact or fiction? Let's see what everybody says. I'm going to type in my own answer, but I'm not going to submit it until we get a few answers here. Let's see what happens. All right, I'm going to put in my answer. Randall says fact. Arun says fact. I think Sam says fact. I think we're already getting some common answers around this. Nathaniel, I'm gonna let you voice this over. Fact or fiction?
I think it passed in 2023. And not subtly. I think is if I remember correctly.
It's absolutely a fact. Indeed, advanced AI models like GPT-4 have demonstrated the ability to pass the bar exam. So a little story about this. I was walking by the coffee shop the other day, and I couldn't help but overhear this young man, and he said, "I just passed the LSAT. I crushed it." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I don't think that's impressive anymore." So we'll see how it goes. All right, everybody. Next one, we've got the statement. The term artificial intelligence was coined in 2001 alongside the launch of Apple's iPod. Fact or fiction? Fact or fiction, everybody. The term artificial intelligence.
Don't look at my face.
Ray is not giving it away. The term artificial intelligence was first coined in 2001 alongside the launch of Apple's iPod. Fact or fiction? Let's see. I think Ray probably knows the answer, but here we go. Randall says fiction. Let's see who else from the audience. Team Red saying fiction. I'm going to chime in, say fiction. I think it's pretty clear. This is probably fiction, y'all. The correct answer is the term artificial intelligence actually dates all the way back to 1955 when it was coined for the 1956 Dartmouth Conference, which is widely considered the birth of AI as a research field. So AI has been around a little while. Last one, and then we're going to say goodbye to everybody. There's currently an AI that can predict whether a brand new song will become a global chart-topping hit. Fact or fiction? So there is currently an AI that can predict whether a brand new song will become a global chart-topping hit. Fact or fiction? I could see, Ray's sort of rubbing his head, thinking deeply about.
Let me get this AI that you're playing with.
Yeah, that's his agent at work, actually. That's the way he triggers the agent in the mind.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sam,
$1 million hits.
There you go. Sam says fact. Randall says fiction. Team Red says fact. We got some differing opinions on this. So I would say the statement is fiction. Now, this is a little, you probably could argue this, but I'm going to say it's fiction. While AI is used to analyze music, identify patterns, and even predict potential hits with specific contexts, consistently predicting a global chart-topping hit with over 90% actually is not quite yet a reality. A little app idea for everybody out there. Go make that and you can make a lot of money. So everybody, that was our fact or fiction fun game. Thanks for chiming in and being silly. Hopefully you learned a little bit something in there, especially about where the term AI came from. That's going to wrap the show, y'all. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit about our nerd alert, our deep dive session about where agents are going, picked up some tips from that, from Tech Buzz, the news. I just want to thank my amazing guests for being on the show, Nathaniel and Ray. Appreciate you both. I know you're busy and you're super smart. So good to have you here. Arun, thank you for stepping in as my amazing co-host. Delight to have you in the show. Everybody, we are live every 2 weeks. So the next show is June 17th. We've got some more amazing guests from you, some more important news we're going to cover. Really appreciate everybody being here. I want to thank the production team for making this all happen. Y'all, this has been Tech Tab episode 3. We will see you next time on June 17th. Thanks everybody for being here. Catch you soon.